Good morning, Misfits. This is the Unprepared podcast by Misfit Athletics, where I come up with a topic before the show, but I do not tell my co-hosts or guests in hopes to elicit a genuine conversation. It is Monday morning, November 9th. I would say that it was a stressful week, but then was the week before that way, and was the month before that way. So we'll just say that it's been quite a year for everyone. I think everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And instead of becoming a political podcast, which could, really light some fires in a few different places, what did you guys do to deal with the madness?
Ooh, I think the first thing was sitting down there and being like, fuck, we finally got through and like actually brought people to the polls and got people out of their shells to make change. So for me, it was a lot of just sitting there and being like, holy shit, it happened. It actually happened.
But we're not going to talk about the politics. We're going to talk about you. What did you do? Like, did you do anything to deal with the stress? Did you eat anything good? Did you run a half marathon? What did you do? What was different? How'd you live it up?
I didn't do anything.
I wouldn't say
you didn't cook anything good?
Like this weekend, or just to deal with the? It
took a week.
Oh yeah, I let the election impact my life -4%. I'm super, very, you could say apathetic about it. You could just say agnostic, or that's going to get us down like the political rabbit hole that nobody wants to hear my opinions
Hunter
on.
didn't have anything to deal with, so he did nothing.
No,
congratulations.
plenty to deal with. Did get to surf on Sunday though, which was very nice.
A great way to spend a weekend.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what arepas are?
Yeah, I've heard. I can't remember.
You've probably heard me running my mouth about them. So they are like sort of like Colombian like pita pocket deal. It's nope. They that's part of like the family, but an arepa is essentially like, it's like kind of like a corn cake, but they cut into it and then stuff it with a bunch of cheese or meat or whatever. And there's a place local here that does them that are really good.
What's that place?
It's called Maze. It's very good. And they do rice bowls with chicharron and all kinds of good stuff. It's right over on Forest Ave. It's quite lovely. They do empanadas too, and I can actually eat them. They're gluten-free, which is awesome. So what I did is, it's odd. They stuff the empanadas with mozzarella and feta, which you'd be like, first of all, where could you get that in Colombia? How is this a Colombian food? And would you even want to do that? The answer is yes.
Amazing.
Just on its own is like the best grilled cheese you've ever had. But Maya bought me 2 of them, but also with like this whole meal. So I had them in the fridge yesterday and I was getting ready to watch the Steelers game, and I made buffalo chicken and put it into the cheese arepa.
I gotta go, guys.
And guys, it was something.
That's amazing.
Wait, you brought some home as well? You ate some?
Yeah, so I got them for takeout. I had 2 left over, and I was heating them up, and I made chicken, and I made buffalo sauce, and I did a little garlic confit blended into the buffalo sauce. It was a whole thing.
Ooh.
Holy shit!
I know I'm going next.
So that's what I did.
That sounds great.
That's how I dealt with my problems.
Yeah.
Yeah,
2
I'd say
big, fat, cheesy sandwiches.
I would say the dealing with my problems wasn't necessarily the right angle, I would say, but it kind of does fit in nicely to what just happened in the world, like dealing with stress. So I have been working on like running for the last, whatever block of time, but it just felt high time to go and do it. Like, you put enough effort into something and you're really been focused on trying to do something specific, which for me was being able to run a half marathon. And for whatever reason, the stars aligned, the temperature was beautiful. We finally decided who the president of the United States was. The entire summer and spring was super stressful, and it just felt like this is a beautiful day to go out and do something. And for me, it was just, what better way than to spend a couple hours in your own head kind of working through things. And what was nice is I did run with a buddy, but after a while, we'll just say he decided not to continue at the same pace. So I've got a good 40 minutes at the end of the run to just kind of think and run. And it was really nice because, I've heard you say this a few times, but you talk about when you're working through a problem, sometimes it's mental, sometimes it's in front of you, that's a physical problem, but to have the opportunity to just kind of think and zone out while still being mindful, which just kind of sounds like polar opposite ideas, but it was nice to be able to just run and think and then talk about like, man, if you think about if you put this much effort and intensity to something else, like this much focus for anything in your life, you could probably work through it pretty well. And that was like a really cool moment during the run, is like, I felt like I'd run this. If I wanted to, I could have just finished another half marathon at that pace because it felt great. And it was because I had put the work in, and I had, set out to do something. And it was just cool to, have that finally come to fruition.
Yeah. And we released an article just on Sunday, Mindfulness for Misfits. And we're trying to, we have a lot of thoughts on the topic, but, as there's sort of like a little pretext at the top that says like, we want to talk to you guys about things like mental health and mindset and all these things. And, what you're talking about is you're putting yourself into a scenario where you are being mindful, and then that leads to you being able to be thoughtful. Mm-hmm. So those things kind of go together for me. Like you need the silence and the clarity and less distractions and all these other things going on for you to then like dig into something. And I'm sure like you weren't deep in thought, like 800 meters in, but you probably were 8 miles in.
No, it was fun too. Like you sit there and you're out there running and you're like working through like, how does my body feel? Like I
was like, Jesus, you do it in like a wheelchair?
No, like right here and right now.
Motorized.
Like, how my ankles feeling? How's my knees feeling? How's my breathing? All those things. And then you have these points where like all that vanishes for a second, and you can think about other things. So for me, I'm actually working on an article right now about nasal breathing. And I was, going back and forth towards the end of this run, practicing a little bit of nasal breathing and thinking about, all right, like what do I notice in myself that's helping me here? And it's helped me work through an article idea and a problem that's in front of me. It's just nice to be able to have that distraction. And I actually find personally that when I'm allowing myself to move and exercise, and I've gotten through a good bit of exercise, that I actually think better. So for me, it's a way of like wiping the slate clean. I know some people like to, go vacations or go for a hike, but for me, physical activity is what brings out the most thoughtful version of me. And for me, that was on Sunday running for an hour and some odd minutes. Like it was a really nice way to work through a problem.
Yeah, it's weird because I wouldn't have understood what the hell you're talking about a couple of years ago, and probably just assumed that like that's not me. Mm-hmm. I'm not that kind of person, but I couldn't agree more. Like when it's time for me to go for a run, I'm excited. Like I like just going out there. I like being outside. I like, the wind and the sun, and like I enjoy going for a run.
It's funny too, because I used to distract myself with so many different things. Like, can I buy new running shoes? Can I get the best headphones? Can I find the flattest route? Can I make sure it's the sunniest, most perfect day? But and all those things used to distract me from the task at hand, and thinking like, that's how I get through these. I create these distractions, then I won't notice how uncomfortable I am or how much less fun I would be having than sitting on the couch watching football and eating nachos. But realistically, like it allows me to then say, hey, I have something in front of me that's challenging and difficult. Why not put my focus into that and see how I feel and see what I can learn? Because a lot of times we avoid learning things, or we try to distract ourselves because we're scared to see what would happen if we didn't have those things. Like, what if I don't have my music, or my music shorts out in the middle of my run? Do I just stop and walk the 3 miles home? The answer is no. Like, you put yourself in these situations that are a little bit uncomfortable, something we talk about quite often. And it was just nice to have, this 4-month period. Every once in a while I'd go without headphones, be like, wow, I actually like the cadence of breathing, or I can think about my steps, or something about the run that creates a different environment than this like distraction full world we live in currently.
What was it like? Did you run into either like a mental or physical barrier at any point? Like, like you hear about people running either half marathons or full marathons, and within like a couple miles of the finish line, their body just shuts down, or they choose that they can't go on any further. And like I always find that super interesting, particularly like the marathon. It's like, oh, I get to like 22 miles and like people like they just shut down, and you're just like, holy fuck, like you're so close. What's going on? What's happening
for
there?
Me? Like the average run, like we used to just every once in a while say, hey, running good's for you. So I'd go run 2 or 3 miles, and that's like a good dose, 30-ish minutes of running, plenty. And I got to the turnaround in the run, right at the halfway mark. And I was like, normally this would be the end of my run, and I would be feeling like terrible, trying to like push to the
It's
end,
amazing
drop my
how
split.
that thing keeps getting extended out, even if it has nothing to do with your fitness.
It was just so funny because I remember like 3 weeks ago I ran 10 miles and that was the longest I had ever run in my entire life. And I remember at the 7 mile mark, I was like, I don't know if I can finish this thing. Like this feels terrible. And it might have had a little bit to do with the route and the fact that we took a little bit more hills that day. But like those problems present themselves and manifest themselves in different ways in other instances in your life. So it was just another chance to face adversity. But when I got to 10 miles yesterday, I was like, BFD, like this doesn't feel any worse or better than it did 2 miles ago or 2 miles before that or 2 miles before that. So just keep plodding along. I will say I did have that moment towards the end, very end, because I had to use the bathroom. And I was like, I got to get to the bathroom as fast as I can.
Onesies or twosies?
Twosies. And there was at the 11 mile mark, I was like, I know how much further this run is. I know what my current pace is, and what better extra incentive to run a little bit harder than trying to go to the bathroom. So
if you're running harder, do your legs spread more in the opening? No,
focus on very short, choppy steps.
Franklin's turtle shell just poking out there. Sure.
So extra, side incentive, but it did actually allow me to focus. And it was really cool, not the bathroom thing, is that now you can see that
the listeners were wondering.
All of the work that you put in, like you would assume that like, you'd get to that point, like you said, like the shut off valve, like, all right, dude, you've gone too far, cut the shit out. Cut it off, you're going too hard, you don't have this in the tank. But what actually happened at the end of the run is like, wow, I feel strangely good for being 11 miles into the longest run of my life by a mile already. I feel strangely good. Well, I got to go to the bathroom, but I could also push and not feel that much different. So it was really cool to go from the, high 8s, low 9 mile to drop down somewhere under 8. And I was like, I think I could keep doing this. And it was kind of neat to just see like all of that aerobic work put in with like purposeful effort of like trying to actually warm up, learn how your body flushes waste and how it gets into the aerobic zone, and then figuring out when you can push. And it's just been a week to week like lesson. Hey, you can go a little bit further. Hey, that can be a bigger window. Hey, you can start a little sooner. And not only does that mean the kick at the end of the run gets longer, but also the overall pace feels better because you just have these bits of information you never had before. So to answer your question, yes, but it was because of the a bathroom issue. It wasn't like a physical like response like, hey, my ankles feel like they're going to snap off, or I feel like I'm cramping up or something. Yeah,
it's the way the body works is fascinating. And when you start to go on those long runs and you have those moments where you're running an 8-minute mile versus a 9-minute mile, or when you have that random stretch where you're positive you can't finish, and it's weird. Like you can start to feel like your body actually releases opioid-like chemicals in your body to like deal with the pain, to sort of help you push through it. And it's cool to be like, it makes no sense that at 17 minutes in, I feel like I'm going to die. And then something happens. You forget that you even felt that way. And now you're 37 minutes in and you feel better than you did all the way back at the beginning. And those are things that you can only find out by just going out and just taking off down the road.
If you had asked me a year ago if I could run a 5K, not a super fast pace, but like we're talking high 8s, and literally feel like I was walking, like going for a walk with a friend and talking, like that's how comfortable that has gotten for me. And again, by no means is a mind-boggling pace, but it was just like cool to see that like that amount of improvement is possible in a very short time window. And for those things to occur and be like, all right, I learned how to warm up, I learned how to flush, and now I'm able to be at a pace where it's comfortable. So now I have context for what it feels like to do something that long. If something like that comes up again, it's willing to be like, all right, well, I know what it was last time. Can I push the dial a little bit further? And like you were saying early on, like it used to be, it'd be impossible to run 5 miles. Oh, it's impossible to run 7 miles. Impossible to run 10 miles. And now it's just like, it's just a task you have to put yourself up against and have that experience. And when you start to learn these things, it's not as daunting as it once was.
And you have to have those moments where you're going through it and you do skip a Sunday because you don't want to run on this course or you don't like this weather. And then you realize that like it would suck to struggle, but missing it sucks more.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because that was the one weekend you were like, what the hell are these splits? And you were like, I sent you I didn't send you the context. Bastard. I just sent you a 4 mile run. I didn't say that like we did like a mile every, 10 minutes.
He was like hitting pause 40. Is what he was doing.
Yeah. So I would run out, run back. And he's like, dude, these are like a minute and a half faster than all the other ones you've ever sent. I was like, yeah,
I think we were running the same distance at the time too. So it was like, show me yours and I'll show you mine. And I was like, fuck you, bro. I ain't showing you shit.
So like
send me 2-minute miles.
It was the Sunday after my son was born. So I was just like, exact same thing. I was very tired. But then I thought to myself like, hey, I've already at this point had like 8 or 9 weeks in. Like, go do something. So for whatever, like allow yourself to have those moments where you have to change something up, or, walk, run, or, that I did that day is just like, all right, we're going to do a little more speed work. We're going to go a little bit faster and take some breaks in between. But like having the ability to do that is way better. It was funny because I was looking on the Instagram comments that I made a post about, and it was just like Josh, one of our followers, was like, hey, it's kind of funny. You post this is the first Sunday in 2 years that I haven't run. And I was just like, oh, well, that's why we make the post on Sunday, is just to hold each other accountable. So I bet you he's going to run at some point during the week. But like having a tribe of people around you that you keep you engaged and keep you like honest is a really important part of that. And I actually found that to be one of the best lessons I learned here, is that, I wasn't necessarily looking for attention when I put it up on Saturday that I was going to run a half marathon. But it's like, if I don't put it out into the world, there could be a very easy reason why I get up Sunday and go, I don't feel like it. Right. So put it out in the world and make it happen.
Also, probably worth noting that like you are running on an average of how many hours of sleep? Probably over the past few weeks?
5 to 7, somewhere in that range.
Okay,
yeah.
so
my wife's way too nice to me. She I could sleep with a bomb going off in my living room. So I have like, hit me, please wake me up, because I won't wake up. Otherwise.
I mean, I think that's definitely worth, like, for anybody out there who's just like, this is hard. They're like in that kind of mental barrier, like you once a week for the past few months, like just got out and ran. And for the past, at least like almost a month, have been dealing with like some pretty serious sleep deprivation compared to what you would
2 months.
You would appreciate
Thursday.
2 months.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, that's worth something for sure.
Yeah. And you don't have a ton of options, because I think part of this is being outside, but like, if your body can't handle whatever, like get yourself a road bike, or get into rucking or whatever. There's just something about that long, steady outside, like checking off like so many boxes at once. Like, I am getting fitter, but I'm also like sort of recharging a little bit, and I'm working through whatever in my head, whether it's an idea for something at work or like personal shit that you're like, I was just being a baby, like whatever it is, like it checks off a lot of boxes.
And to me, like just with the type of training we do day in and day out, we talk about, the true like CrossFit essence, like you got to go long, short, and medium. Like for me, the long for most parts, 20 minutes or less. So it was like, you'd passed along that article about the non-exercise movement and how healthy that was for you. And it's like, I don't really have a lot of this in my life. Like outside of coaching, and I'll walk around the gym when I'm coaching and I get some steps in, but like I don't get outside enough. And I'm like sitting behind a computer, writing articles, programming, dealing with, all of our stuff that's gym related, and then coaching out in the gym. It's like, I don't have that like, outdoorsy job that puts me out in nature and lets me to recharge like that. So like it started in quarantine with rucks with one of our members. We would literally just put 20 to 40 pounds in a pack and just go walk for anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes. And after a while, it started to warm up a little bit. And I was like, my back's a little tight. I'm going to go for a jog today. And it just literally transitioned one weekend from rucks into runs. But like you said, it could be anything. Even just going for like a casual hike would be putting you out in a situation where you're doing like that lower intensity movement for a long period of time. And again, if you're someone that is very cerebral and stuck in your own head, it's just a nice way to like kind of unplug for a little bit and recharge.
How many scoops of proper fuel did you take after you finished?
Ooh, that's a good question. I actually really, really like the dose that Tola told me about, which is about 14 to 16 ounces of coconut water with 4 scoops. I hammered that thing right afterwards.
Coconut water.
Coconut water. It's a little bit sweeter, and don't get me wrong, but you get a little extra in there, so a little sweetness. So yeah, it was really good. And it's like a milkshake.
Mixes in with the Himalayan pink salt, carbs, protein, everything you need post-workout. Use the code MISFIT to save on your first order. Properfuel.co.
Boom.
Cheer.
Got him.
That's a great segue into today's topic for Unprepared. And I have two things to say to start. One, this is meant to be more of like a light and fun type of episode. And then the way I'm going to bring it up is very tongue in cheek. And Hunter will laugh because we started to have this conversation last week. Are CrossFit coaches overqualified to train traditional sports athletes?
I laughed. You were right.
Ooh. Overqualified meaning we just have a little bit more.
That's the tongue-in-cheek part. Are CrossFit coaches qualified to train traditional sports athletes? And you might know my opinion based on my tongue-in-cheek question to start.
Unlikely. Definitely not qualified.
I'll give a little context to start.
Sure.
When you
really you gonna do that?
When you own
you can't give context.
A CrossFit gym, okay, and you could even just leave it at that. But obviously, we own CrossFit gym and we train CrossFit Games athletes and sort of everything in between. And you get people who connect with some of your members, who the guys like, whatever, I'm going to go to this place and he's going to do the speed ladder and he's going to throw golf balls around and like do all kinds of weird shit. And it's like, how fancy can we make this? And then the CrossFitter will say to their friend, are you kidding me? You need to go see Drew and Hunter and Sherb and Caroline and Asa. You need to go see these people because they're going to be able to help you in a way that like is so completely different and what we would consider quote unquote better. So when you're dealing with that, you get these, I feel like third party proof of concept is really like the best thing that you can have as a business. So you have these people that are out there that are like selling your product essentially just because it works for them. So you have this person that comes in and they have expectations and they're hesitant at the same time. And they're asking an expert to help them and then making their own suggestions. And it's just this whole like convoluted world of like, it's hard to buy into something that you don't completely understand.
I think there's an important distinction, and that I would say that a CrossFit coach is more qualified to provide a strength and conditioning program than a quote strength and conditioning coach is. To me, the strength and conditioning coach for a specific team is actually a like skills and drills coach. That person is the one, because if you're an athlete, if you're a football player or a hockey player, you come into the gym and you say like, I want to get like, I'm here for my off-season program where you're going to do 5x5 back squats, some power cleans and conditioning work. What we're not going to do is I'm not going to stand at one end, have you face me, and when I say go, turn around, and then I'm going to throw a football for you to run and catch. Like we don't do that. Oh, got it. Damn, that was a great one.
Is that the intro to the podcast?
Good
I'm throwing a football as the intro to this podcast.
Get fucked.
YouTube. We're on YouTube now. Yeah. We get enough views on this, we will go live to Hunter throwing footballs. Keep going.
God damn it. I can throw a football fine.
Which hand do you throw with?
He didn't want us to feel bad. He didn't want us to feel bad. He's actually left-handed and he's just never shown us.
Yeah. I can throw 50 yards.
Quarter mile.
Yeah. What we're not going to do is you're probably not going to see a speed ladder. You're probably not going to see like, these wild tennis ball drills or like Bosu ball stuff, like things like that. I would say CrossFit coaches are more qualified to get somebody's strength and conditioning or general physical preparedness significantly higher than, not significantly, I would say we are more qualified than a lot of strength and conditioning coaches out there. I won't say all, there are plenty who are terrific, but the amount of Instagram and YouTube videos I see of professional athletes doing the fucking
stupid
like
shit
crossover while standing on a Bosu ball, like here's my rotational,
especially when you know that their
work.
Fundamentals aren't where they need to be. Like
Right.
Maybe if someone came into the gym and, ass to grass, beautiful squat with a bunch of weight on their back, they're pulling heavy off the floor, they understand the drive phase when they're sprinting, all of this stuff. And you're like, oh, we might be able to add some twisting in for this. But like, that they're not checking those boxes off first. They're not doing that in the dark in the basement and then coming up, and working on this silly shit as the bulk of their, like, that's what they're actually doing.
So I had a little bit of a firsthand experience with this, both playing college football, not that we had like a real dedicated strength and conditioning coach. Like we had a football coach who was the strength and conditioning coach, and to know what they had for information into what we were taught couldn't be further from what we currently teach now is how to execute these movements. Like, again, I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole. And then in graduate school, working with the strength and conditioning coach with the women's basketball team, women's field hockey, men's hockey, and men's football, the stuff that they do in the weight room is definitely beneficial, but is the best use of their time? I would argue absolutely not. Like, if I were to rewrite or to help these individuals, just like you were saying, you got to check off the fundamentals first. These kids don't know what a squat is. These kids don't know what a press is. They don't know how to pull from the floor. And while those movements are great, they are sport specific and they're great to have. And the way I like to think of it is, unfortunately, they don't look at it the same way we would, where there's an off season where it needs to be about developing raw strength, power, agility, all those things. And they try to pepper the stuff throughout the entire year. And watching all those Instagram videos, you have people who are trying to be creative to probably keep athletes engaged and have them feel like they're doing their real sport. But at the end of the day, they're doing them a disservice. They're not getting what they could be from there. I just like want to go back to like the CrossFit like pyramid where nutrition's the base and the conditioning second. Like that's where these athletes should spend their time, learning how to get themselves in shape, learn how to move their body, and then learn how to lift weights. And then and only then does those drills like the speed ladders, the Bosu balls, then do those things matter. So for me, it's like I've seen it firsthand, but it doesn't get you the clicks on Instagram. It doesn't look as cool. So it's not sexy, quote unquote.
Yeah, I think the distinction is that it's a flawed system, and CrossFit has kind of been fighting that concept for a long time. The difference between a CrossFit coach and somebody who can get qualified as a CSCS or a NASM certified trainer is like you need to take a test. You need to read, and you need to be able to answer questions on a test. If you can't become a CrossFit trainer without at least some practical application and hands-on. And I'm not saying the L1 is the pinnacle of that sort of thing. I think the L1 is something that every human should do as far as learning how to move correctly. But as a CrossFit coach, you learn how to teach somebody how to move. And I can't say the same. And again, not saying that a strength and conditioning coach doesn't know how to teach somebody how to back squat, but it's certainly not required for them to get there, to get to that point. And being able to identify movement patterns and how kind of the biomechanics of joint angles and stuff like that sort of thing comes with observing and watching a lot of people do it, but also having the baseline understanding of how to teach somebody this is how you perform a correct squat or deadlift or pull.
How sore do you think those athletes would be if they had to actually learn to do those things, actually put themselves to that range of motion? If they had to put themselves in a situation where
I can tell you from really personal experience that I played sports into college and continued to do my general go in strength and not conditioning. And I continued to do that work. And then I decided randomly one day that I was going to start taking classes for MMA. And I went in on striking night, and I had done a bunch of boxing before. So that part was fun, but then it was okay, it's time for conditioning. And it was air squats and bodyweight lunges. And I had a tough time. So it was in this plaza where they were kind of down in the basement. They had one of those top half of the window you could see out into the street sort of thing, just below street level. And I had a tough time leaving the place. So the soreness was probably one of the worst. It was basically the first time you do a couple hundred wall balls kind of soreness. But I had it when I left the gym. I couldn't make it out of the gym.
Classic same hour soreness.
It was crazy. And then, we're talking days of I used to ride my bike to school, and I had to drive to school, and I had to park in illegal spots to make it to class.
Find anything that helped you?
It was that bad.
Did you find anything that helped you during that period? Is there anything that you could have done? Maybe take some Pure Spectrum CBD salve for those sore joints?
Nice.
At that point, I probably would have thought that I was taking drugs, and drugs
are bad.
Drugs are bad. Okay. So I probably would have seen the the leaf and been hey, it ruins lives, but keep going.
Well, if you're like Drew, you jump into a workout maybe you weren't quite ready for, and you have some sore muscles, you
that
guys
still
should
is me.
Definitely check out Pure Spectrum CBD. Use the code word Misfit. Take care of those sore muscles and joints. You will feel better. I rubbed stuff all over my legs yesterday. Salve.
This is a family-friendly podcast.
All over my legs yesterday, and I actually feel pretty good today. So I definitely recommend you guys check it out. Use the code word Misfit to save some green.
Boom. So I have a rant ready for this, and I've been just bubbling on it, just really simmering. But
Drew, what are your thoughts?
I will give a little pretense. The point of this conversation is to say you could share this with someone and say, hey, here's why this would work. And if I act like an asshole the entire time, I'm probably not going to be an excellent salesperson, right? But then it's also a lot of CrossFit coaches listen to this. Hey, you have a skill set and you could diversify your business in a way that could completely change your entire business, right? And for me, it's about the fact that I go throughout my year and we pick up new athletes or we set new goals with athletes that we have. And the amount of categories that they come to me with, I am no good at sprinting on the rower. I need to be a better runner. I need to be stronger. I need to figure out this skill. I need to have this movement pattern nailed down. We're talking about every energy system, every type of human movement. And I have to be able to knock that out of the park, every single category, no matter what your issue is, physically, even, the mental game, all of that. We have to be experts in every single one of those areas, or we wouldn't have a job. We would not be sitting here right now.
Correct.
No chance, right? So when someone comes through the door and they're like, are you really qualified to do X? And it's like, not only am I qualified to do X, but I was qualified to do A through Y, and I'm qualified to do Z as well.
It's funny, as a sport, we literally have the most complicated sport that has ever been trained for being trained every single day at the facility. And I know
you just don't know what the person's going to be good at. You don't know what weakness is going to be there, and you have to be able to evaluate it and see it and fix it.
Well, it's crazy too, because, talk about moving the goalpost back further and further, like every single day, every single month, every single year, the sport changes. What these athletes have to be able to do changes. So like as soon as you're like, oh, I figured out how to get someone good at Fran, it's like, cool, now do Fran with 185 and I don't know, 500-pound weight vest.
The scope changes, the performance levels change, all of that has to be there.
Yeah, so, sorry, go ahead. No, you finish.
I was just going to say, like, if you thought about this from another sport, like, getting ready for football, for example, depending on where you play on the field, like if you're a lineman, it's like, hey, you need to be able to sprint for 7 to 10 seconds and then push someone it's really heavy. So you need strong legs and a strong upper body. So like, there are only a handful of things you really need to check off and be really proficient in, in the strength and conditioning world outside of the skill of the sport, like to get that athlete ready versus the CrossFit athlete, where we're spending years and years and still developing athletes who, are amazing capacity wise, but still have room to grow in other areas, which I think is both fun from our perspective. It's like, hey, we're not there yet. We're still developing, and that to me is exciting because it creates this new challenge. It's like a brand new puzzle gets laid on your desk every single day.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to interject with, is just if you play kind of a conventional sport, there's a much narrower skill set that is required of you. And I'm not necessarily, like we said, I'm not teaching you how to throw a baseball. Nah. I'm not,
That's a skill in this building. You need to learn to make fun of yourself. You beat them to the punch.
I'm not, yes. We're not working on those extremely sport specific skills. We're here to improve those energy systems, improve the strength and kind of conditioning aspects that we know are going to improve your sport, and probably a little bit further to the left and to the right of those, because we believe in having that super wide GPP base in order to perform better at your sport. For CrossFitters, the base of that pyramid is insanely wide. For anybody else playing a conventional sport, it is significantly smaller just by the nature of what you have to do and the fact that it's predictable in a lot of ways. Like you are not, when you go out and play your sport, the time is fixed. The amount of time you probably spend on the court or the ice is relatively similar every game. You know how long you need to be able to output before there's a substitution or there's a line change or something like that. Those things are much more predictable than the sport of fitness. So I think for kind of those conventional sport athletes, there's a level of like, hey, understanding what CrossFit is and what it kind of, how it would benefit you, and then trying to think like, oh, how would this benefit me in my sport? And for us, it's the conditioning side. It's the general physical preparedness. And if we can jack that up high enough, then we can send you back to your sports team, and imagine how much better practice, the quality of your practice would be if you almost never had to worry about being out of breath. Like, you could
feeling like shit because you practiced the day before.
Or feeling like shit because you practiced the day before. Like just having the fitness to be able to run that same drill, 10, 20 extra times. Imagine if you were able to run it twice as many times as you were in practice with a higher quality level. Like, holy shit.
I was just going to say, imagine if every sport, I know definitely CrossFit athletes undulate in terms of where they're peaking for their like competition versus the other times of the year. But at a basic level, they keep a very high level of fitness year round, every single day. And, you know, I remember like preseason football in high school, like think about the first 4-ish weeks of that. Not like, other than the fact there's twice a days and everybody didn't do anything all summer and we're running 800 laps around the football field. Like,
I don't think I threw a football outside of
saying,
like from November to August,
but like
not once.
Think about that at any level of professional sports or even like, you know, semi-professional or college. Like, imagine if you didn't have to get these kids in shape. If that was just like, hey, that's who we are. We're always at this general level of physical preparedness. And don't get me wrong, a lot of them stay in pretty good shape. But like, imagine, like you said, if you hadn't to spend that time doing that, and instead could be doing practice drills or film time or other things, just because that was already something that you kind of check that box off year round.
I remember listening to like some stuff from Louis Simmons, who's like, that's probably a slightly narrower scope of strength and conditioning than what a CrossFit gym provides, but actually probably more similar than you would think. And just like how many high-level football players come through the door, and he's just like, yeah, you're going to squat, you're going to do a bunch of accessory work, and then we're going to push a sled and do like some basic GPP, and 225 bench number goes up, their 40 goes down. Like, it's like, no, yeah, we just made these people stronger and taught them how to move correctly.
Yeah, that's just like bringing back so many memories of this stuff, because even if you did try in those scenarios, like we were told, we got a new football coach our senior year of high school, and we were told that we had to be able to run 16 110-yard sprints at a certain interval in a certain amount of time. We had to do that. Guess what the training was for that?
Just did it over and over again.
And it was crazy. You'd go down to the track, it'd be 90 degrees outside. There'd only be a handful of people because it was that you weren't allowed to make it mandatory. I know if like we lived in Texas or something, everyone would have been there, but not that many people were there. And the rest periods were so short and we weren't hitting the times. No one was hitting the times. Some people were fucking walking. And it's like, I'm thinking back, I'm thinking to going out on the assault bike and telling someone in class to sprint for 30 seconds and then 15 seconds later say, match your calories from last time. Like, I understand that could be a test, but the idea that you just run yourself into the ground with the test over and over is the most asinine thing I can possibly think of.
And I think that like knowing energy systems and stuff like that, like don't get me wrong, I have the ACSM, had the CSCS, but a lot of those things aren't really talked about. Like you learn that 5x5 is the only way to ever get anyone strong. And if you do 3x10, they're going to make their muscles big. And you know, here's how to keep your knees safe. But like none of that.
Well, that's because it's like I'm either a lifter or you're a pussy because you run, or you're a meathead. Like these communities could help each other in like massive ways.
I don't want to get too much muscle. It's going to slow me down.
Don't get me started with that nonsense. But like, it's just crazy to me to think about how much practical knowledge you have as the CrossFit coach, not even high level, like competitive CrossFitters, but if you just coach at your affiliate, you see what happens to people day in and day out. And if you took that same bit of information that you said and just walked back to your high school football coach, you're like, wait, I can't bench 225, so I'm just going to keep trying to bench 225 until I can't. Like,
yeah, dog.
That's fucking stupid. Why the fuck am I doing that? It doesn't make any sense. How is that going to help me? And that's the part, you know, I think my freshman or sophomore year, we took a BFS and, you know, beat the computer, which was supposed to be some, you know, fucking super fancy strength program where they like, you would have like 3 rotating.
Bigger, faster, stronger.
Yeah, 3 mandatory lifts and a bunch of accessory shit. And every week, the computer would add like 2.5%. Wow, amazing.
Or it would say like, the computer says you can get 17 reps. Can you get 17 reps? And everyone always got like 46.
It's like, hey, I did 10 bench presses at 95 pounds. Well, that means you can bench 300. It's like, no, I can't. I definitely can't.
I'm a CrossFitter. I can do 50 back squats at 225. My 1 rep max is 412,000 pounds.
But basically, yeah. And it's just funny to see like, as the CrossFit
that was just laziness. I can go in and print your thing off here, do that.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, it was nice to have some structure because I think, honestly, our football coach was doing his best to do that, not his scope of practice at all. But like, you think back on it and like, LOL, that's a really terrible program. And the fact that it was just a computer program and then go do this with like one little day of videos on here's how you snatch and it's like a barbell rainbow out and around your body. You're like, I didn't learn anything from that. Like, I didn't learn much from my strength and conditioning coach in high school other than the fact that it was good to work hard. So there were some lessons, but for the most part, a lot of wasted time.
That program is one of the main reasons why I'm sitting here right now. because I got so mad that I actually went in and tried and it did nothing. So then I just went and found books and articles online and found 3x10 linear progression and added 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds to all my lifts in months. And I just go to Globo Gym. I'd load up 115 pounds. I'd bench it 10 times, load up 120 pounds, bench it 10 times. I'd add weight every week. But then like I couldn't really do strict pull-ups before. And I'm starting to do strict pull-ups, or like my bench press or my back squats going up and I haven't even done any. Like that.
What you're talking about is
pissed
exactly
me off so much that I was trying and getting no results.
What you described is exactly what I thought too. I got to college and they gave you this program, and kind of right when I was
the binder
when I was
like 75 pages,
finding out like what strength and conditioning is about. And you looked at this, and it was basically very generic hypertrophy training and a little bit of like 5x5, but didn't quite understand it. So got into CrossFit, and all of a sudden, you go to an affiliate or you hear about like Wendler, like it's a great program, like 5-3-1 and this and that. And I was like, oh, it was cool, and it worked for a little bit as a beginner. And then that's really what same idea is. Like I got into this idea of, hey, like I play a college sport, I can do like 3 pull-ups. Like something's misbalanced. And so something, when I found CrossFit, clicked, because it was like, all right, like it's great to move a barbell, it's great to be strong, but like, can you move yourself? And like thinking about how that would be played back into sports, I was like, shit, there's something that's really missing here. So that kind of got me down that same rabbit hole of like finding starting strength, Mark Ripeto's book, and just being like, oh, there's more than 5-3-1, or there's more than beat the computer. And like, that's the kind of the cool part, is it sort of set me off on the same journey. It's like, I'm so sick of this fucking program not doing me any good. And like, how many times can you realistically do the same program before you're like, it's like everybody who buys a Men's Health magazine and goes to Planet Fitness and does the fucking Hugh Jackman Wolverine workout for 4 weeks and then goes, this is fucking stupid, I'm doing something else.
Dude, I did the 300 workout from Men's Health
Me
so
too.
many fucking times.
That's how I got into CrossFit. That's actually how I got into CrossFit. Was that exact
windshield
fucking
wipers
workout.
middle of the workout? Like you're breathing hard and then they're just like, do some windshield wipers, and they're like, fuck.
They want you to do it with 135 pounds in a floor press and then just kind of go side to side with those feet. But like, it's funny. That's actually how I started getting into CrossFit, was right around the 300 movie coming out. And I was like, those guys look fucking ripped. And it was like Jim Jones and CrossFit were a thing. And it's funny. That's how it actually did end up happening, was, what bought me into it.
Gotta love HDR.
It's crazy. It's a hell of a drug.
Yeah, to me, it's a fun topic because you can't really understand it until you experience it or you see someone else go through it. Like step one of this evaluation is, and I know the egos that come through typically don't want this, but it's just get into class. Like your general physical preparedness will help you much more than, surprise, surprise, going and trying to specialize right off the bat. Like if you have extra time, sure, it'd be great. Let's get you in and get you on a linear progression squat program, or, make sure you're pulling heavy deadlifts once a week. But like you just getting into actual shape and finding like the huge gaps in your energy systems, or like a muscular imbalance, like, a lot of the young people come in and they have absolutely no posterior chain. Like you're going to find those things out much easier and have a lot more fun doing it going into a class. And it's a hard sell a lot of times because people think of class, they think of like
Weight Watchers,
boot camp or step aerobics or whatever it is. And it's like, well, maybe, you convince the dad to come try. You're like, all right, boss, come on in and do Fran with us.
It's funny too, is that the type of athletes we're speaking to right now, a lot of them are team sports. Like you use the competitive nature in your sport day in and day out to push you to be better and better. Like what if you got to use the entire off season, which is 85% of your training and 85% of your sport, like preparing to play the next following season. What if you use that time to be competitive with one another and to use each other to push off from, versus just like, oh man, I can curl more than you. But you actually did the things that most people do in CrossFit classes, which is a great piece of advice. Like imagine if you went in there and just tried your best every single day and you actually pushed yourself, versus what I did in the weight room, which was be there for 3 hours and work out for about 15 minutes of it, because it was, between my squat sets, I could chat for an hour and grab some water and then make a shake and then talk about why my fucking tank top didn't fit right or something stupid. Like how much time was wasted in traditional strength and conditioning versus like go in, work really hard for an hour and be done with it and actually make the progress you're trying to achieve while you're there.
So what's the sales pitch? Like you have people come in and obviously they're going to have different goals. Like someone's going to come in and, maybe their kid plays soccer or they play soccer and their endurance isn't where it needs to be. They have the skills, they have the fast, quick burst speed. They're a little bit smaller. They need the endurance. or it's the exact opposite. They can run for days, but they're getting pushed around on the field or something like that. Like, how do you have that conversation and get this point across without being like, oh, you're going to go do that bullshit, like that kind of thing? Because that sort of sales pitch is never going to work. What is the sales pitch? How do you get someone? How do you get someone to buy in? You want to be the coach that changes.
Yeah. I don't want to sell it. I suck at it. So I get terrified every time someone comes in asking about the gym, because I'm terrible at telling them why they should join, because I know that it works, but I'm terrible. You're way better at it than I am.
Just for me, it's like, what's your why? Like in these athlete situation, like something brought them there. Some part of their being recognized that there was a hole in their
dad was going to beat someone up at the hockey game,
or their dad was like, "Hey, you're too puny. Let's go to the weight room. Like, get stronger." But like, I think it's kind of like when someone walks in up the street and asks you what's CrossFit, and you're like, "Fuck, how much time you get, buddy? I can't give you a definition that's succinct." So for me, a lot of times it's like giving them some experience in what we do. Like, I know it's an old like Glassman quote. It's like, give me a few sessions and I'll figure out what you're bad at and I'll figure out how to make you better. Like, to me, that's the sales pitch for these athletes. Like,
true.
Hey, if you come in and you're like, hey, I'm here because I want to get stronger. All right, well, let's figure out what you're strong at and what you're weak at. And then hopefully when I put you through something that you're not great at, you go, oh shit, like, I can see how that would help me there. And part of it's like our job to provide that context. Like, a soccer player might not understand that like bench press is going to help him, push people around and get in better position when a corner kick is happening. But like, that's the kind of context we have to provide for these athletes. So part of it's on the coach understanding why this person might come here or what you could do for them, and like try to put it in their words. Because if you just say like, you're going to get this, pennation angle and you're going to hypertrophy, they're just going to look at you and go, the fuck you say? Like, I don't care anything about that. Like, tell me why I care. So, to me, it's no different than a beginner coming in and explaining to you what their goals are and finding a way to use CrossFit terminology, but frame it in a context they understand. So for me, it's try to get them into a session or two, or try to talk them into trying it a few times, and then putting it in words they understand and context they understand, so they can see how it would relate to them. And then when they have that like light bulb moment, you're like, all right, now he gets it. Now he sees why this is important. And we have that happen all the time at the gym. Someone's like, hey, I was able to take the fucking flight of stairs at work and not be gassed and I have to wait for the elevator for 15 minutes. Like, they're like, oh, that's my why CrossFit. Or they're able to go hiking for the first time and not be winded with their family. Like, aha, there's their CrossFit moment of why it matters. So to me, it's just about those two things: is try to get them to buy into a couple sessions, and then two, give it in the context that make them understand. Because if you just, again, lay out your terms, they're going to be like, I'm just not going to understand you.
Yeah, I think it's about, for me, like if there was a generic template for it, number one is projecting confidence in what you're giving to the person. So if you can just talk to them in terms of like one of the sales tactics that typically works is mirroring. So like, you might have someone come in that is a little quote unquote nerdier about the topic and understands something, or just needs to hear, I'm going to do this, my kid's going to do this, whatever, that's fine. But projecting confidence and being like, this is going to work so well that really all I want to accomplish in our conversation today is that you give this a chance to see, like, I'm positive. And if you need details, that's totally fine. And I think you're going to be able to tell in the conversation with that person, like, do they need that? But being able to talk their language is super important. So like, you might have someone come in that, I don't know, read an article and thinks they know X, Y, and Z, and they want to hear you, throw around your terms or whatever, yep, which is fine. But to me, that's the number one goal, is if someone comes in and this is why you would need the practice. I mean, we have a perfect example. Hunter's sitting right here. He says he doesn't like to do this, but he's world class at the execution of the thing out in the gym, right? So from a business standpoint, you have to get yourself to a point where you know that you can go speak confidently about the fact that you are going to be able to help someone improve. And that's really all they need to hear.
Yeah. And again, it's like we say, how you do anything, how you do everything. Like, you're going to bumblefuck your way, on Hunter's terms right there, through a good deal of these early on. Like, part of understanding and how do you become better at this type of stuff, like going out in the gym and selling. Like, it was funny because I remember when you like first got back and were starting to coaching, someone came in and be like, you mind going to talk to somebody, just because you didn't feel as comfortable as I did. And I was like, sure, I'd be happy to. I should have said, no, fuck you, go do it yourself. Because the only way you're going to get better at it is if you go put yourself up against it. And
the only way you're going to say that is in a hypothetical, like 5 seconds ago.
Truth.
Keep going.
Truth. But like the idea is you have to put yourself in this scenario. And we were talking about with the running earlier in the podcast, the same idea. Like it really is the exact same concept until you put yourself out there and have firsthand experience and seen how it helps somebody. And then, like you said, started to learn how to have these conversations with somebody and figure out what type of conversation is going to make them latch on to what you're saying. Because as the coach and as this, you need to be able to relate to a bunch of different people. So learning how to do that item takes some practice, but when you get good at it, you'll know soon off, because no longer are you doing most of the talking. They're doing most of the talking, and they're just every once in a while you're interjecting what they need to hear to get that buy-in. Because again, all we're looking for is that the willingness in the participant to go and try it, because once you do, then you get to fucking nail what you're great at, which is the execution of the said training. Like the hard part is just getting them to buy in, and if you can start to dial that in, you got it, lined up and you're ready to go.
Yeah, I think there's kind of the two sides. If you're the athlete listening to this, or you've got a friend who's like, oh man, this guy, he's division whatever, football player, soccer player, like he could be so good at CrossFit, or maybe more specific, more to them, like, oh, he would benefit so much by doing CrossFit and would become an even better football player or whatever. It's communicating like ask, hey, what do you want to improve on? If you're a running back or something, you want to say, what do you want to improve on? And well, I need to be able to change directions quicker or something like that. Whatever they say almost doesn't matter. It's more for you to prove to them that you're listening and you're hearing what they say. Right. And then like in your mind, you're saying like, yeah, I don't care.
We were already going to back squat.
Yeah, we were already going to back squat. We weren't going to do any ladder drills. Like we're going to teach you how to squat. We're going to teach you we're going to improve your flexibility so that you actually like understand how to move your body and can do it confidently. It's it's like kind of talking to that athlete, and whatever they say, this sounds a little bit like sleazy, but whatever they say, you have to be confident as the coach that you can improve that, because we know, having the kind of that methodology behind us of GPP, that person, maybe they don't see like this very, very specific thing of theirs, like shoot through the roof and increase, but the other things that will come up, like that rising tide kind of lifting all ships sort of mentality, will far outweigh that very one specific thing that they thought is what they needed to improve. Because it's like, you don't need to improve that. You just probably need to get fitter. Like we can get you a little bit stronger. We can get you a little bit better condition. And then for the coach, it's kind of having that confidence to recognize that you have the best strength and conditioning program kind of at your back, assuming that, there are good programs, there are bad programs, there are good CrossFit gyms, there are bad ones, but let's assume that you are pretty competent and a pretty solid coach in a gym. Like be confident that just doing what you don't need to kind of cater by, pulling out the speed ladder or doing the fancy like tennis ball drills or whatever, like teach them CrossFit. Yeah.
And the thing about that is we've talked about it in terms of remote coaching before. You absolutely need to understand that helping someone cross a bridge that they didn't think they could get over is the easiest way to earn their trust. So like, even if very specifically they want something done and they want you to check this box off for them quicker, it's okay to go do that. It's okay to have, them show up 30 minutes before class and teach them how to back squat or do these things, because it is going to help and it is going to get people there. And what that brings to mind for me is always having a case study ready. Like if someone needs to hear something, and for me, my case study was just me. So it's always super easy for me to say, hey, like I, with basically no training, played college sports, and like, once that's done, you kind of feel like that's it. Like you're not going to do it again. But then I decided to play like adult, like men's league baseball. And I was like, I don't even recognize who I am as a person post CrossFit. Like this doesn't make any sense. Like I was following .com workouts. I knew, compared to what I know now about strength and conditioning, I basically knew absolutely nothing. But I went in and started to move into these areas where I had these massive gaps, and it translated very specifically to a sport I hadn't played in years. I hadn't played baseball for 2 or 3 years, and I was better at baseball from CrossFit than I was when I was playing every day in college. Like in being able to say that to someone is like incredibly important. And like, it does help when it's you in the story, but everyone else is, you're going to have like, the more you work into this, the more you're going to have the case studies. You can be like, hey, I actually had this kid come in, last year, and now they're, being recruited by so-and-so, and we didn't, whatever, touch a lacrosse stick. Like, it was never part of what we're doing.
It's funny. I had a guy come to us over the summer. He was getting ready to play Big Ten lacrosse, and he had played at some really high-level Division II school, and he had gone next door to Planet Fitness for a while, and he's like, this fucking place, like, I don't have the motivation. I don't know what I'm doing. I have this program, and he, brought it to me, and like any other college strength and conditioning program, it had some good stuff, had some okay stuff, had some shitty stuff in it, and it was just like, shelve that for a second. Like, if you have a question on how to do any of these things, I'm happy to show you how to do some of these movements, because they, hey, college kid that doesn't give a shit about strength and conditioning, read a paragraph and then do the exercise. Yeah, that's going to happen. Came in, and I tell him right off the bat, he's like, talking about quickness first step, and I think about that. And I think about every single strength and conditioning video. He's going to want me to fucking go dig out back and find a speed ladder and have us do karaoke and fucking hoppy all around everything. I was like, let's try this. So I put him on an assault bike day one. And we did, yeah, good form. So like we did, I don't know.
Took his ego and you threw it in the trash can.
We did some sprints, and I just said, hey.
You like that?
I was like, Tyler, all right, we're going to do 5 like 10-calorie sprints with like 2 or 3 minutes rest in. Like 5 10-calorie sprints. And after like 3, he's like, I can't fucking keep going. And I was like, think about this real quick. You're playing your game. It's the first fucking quarter. You feel fucking great. You get through the first quarter. Second quarter comes. You're not feeling as great, but you're still able to go quick. Third and fourth quarter come around, and you can't get through 5 bike sprints that are a total of probably about 30 seconds. How do you think that translates to your sport? And he's like, oh, fuck. I'm not in shape, am I? I'm like, no, you're not in shape. But here are some things you can do on the side. And that proof of concept of being like, holy shit, like I couldn't do 5 10-second sprints, and I'm going to play a sport that takes me an hour, and I'll have to do more than 5 10-second sprints over the course of the game. Like, fuck, if I go get the salt bike, how good am I going to feel when it comes time to play? And now I haven't checked back in with him recently, but I do know it when he got there. He's like, the coach says this is as quick as I've looked. And I know he's not playing his sport yet. They're playing in the spring, but like he was super stoked that he sent me a message. I was like, he didn't say thanks for the assault bike sprint. He said, thanks for helping me with my first step. And It's like, guess what? We got what you want by doing what I think is the right way to do it. Now, I didn't tell you that this wasn't fucking Parisi speed ladders, but you got better at that because you got fitter. And to me, that's like the coolest thing. It's like, that's a perfect example of using our methodology to help an athlete who has glaring weaknesses in his overall health and fitness, and how that translates to his sport. And he was already really good. He's going to be better because he got in better shape. And to me, that's the coolest part about this, like finding that athlete's context. Yeah.
We're always going to be CrossFit first around here. Like that's just how it is. Affiliate athletes, taking someone from, sick to well is super important to us. And obviously getting someone, to the CrossFit games is really important for us. But you'll know if we've completely made it, quote unquote, when the whatever Misfit Performance Institute opens. Yeah. Because that is like a super long-term kind of like dream goal for me. The funny thing about it is it wouldn't be that much different. I just think you would need the name and the, I don't know, 1 square inch of turf in the corner to tell people.
I was gonna say you need turf.
We're gonna go buy turf and hang in the corner.
A 10-foot strip of turf with a sled that just sits on it. It never actually gets used.
We just glue it there.
Hey, did you guys see that? We got that here. You want to join?
Turf for the wall.
That's great.
Yeah.
It is final thoughts time.
What you got for us, Hunter?
I don't know. You go ahead.
For me, it's just, again, if you want to help these athletes, don't think that you're not in a position to help them. Like, if you take a few minutes and think about what your program does and what it can offer somebody, you might have the most profound and impactful training program they could ever do to make them a better athlete, which is, for most of them, their identity and who they want to be. So don't be afraid to do so. Like, I mean, that's sort of like PSA, pleading to the people, but like, you have this opportunity to help people. And while I know a lot of us get into it because we either liked CrossFit ourselves and we want to teach other people it, or you might be really on the health side, like these things can coexist. The old I go back to Glassman over and over again, but like our needs
maybe
differ
don't
by
do that
kind
anymore.
instead of by degree instead of kind. Like we all need these certain things in our life, and just think about that from the athlete's perspective and how you can help them. And I really do think we could make a profound change, and I do think over time this methodology would be more widely adopted and more widely used. But just keep fighting the good fight, because if we don't do it, no one else is gonna.
I think the kind of going back to the sales pitch thing is important, and I guess using yourself as that kind of N+1 example or experiment to that person who's like, I don't really know, like I've seen some weird YouTube videos on CrossFit, and everybody kind of knows what's the word, like basically how everybody views CrossFit, kind of that feel like, oh, CrossFit, they do like kipping pull-ups and like stupid, like people dropping barbells on their head when they're snatching, and it's
How
like,
I do it.
yeah. It's communicating, yeah, like, okay, that one, those things are like anomalies, and two, for me personally, like if I had done CrossFit in high school, for example, or even the year or two after, like my trajectory in athletics would have been significantly different. Like I just go to think, like in college, I was by far, like I played club hockey, like, but because I was doing CrossFit, that was the best hockey I played. Just because I was in such good shape. Whereas in high school, like and I would classify myself as even like, I was squatting and benching and like deadlifting in high school, just because I don't remember where I found it, but I was like, this seems to work. I wasn't necessarily squatting below parallel, but like those sorts of things helped me like go from a very average kind of JV athlete to like, kind of like all state in high school. And it was because I did those things, basically the things that you would find in a CrossFit gym, but on my own, kind of without having done it. And now I look back at the things that I can do now and say to myself, like, I'm very confident that I could have played like at a pretty decent Division III school, maybe like tried to walk onto a below average Division I for hockey, but like saying like, hey, I wish that I was doing this sort of stuff. Trust me a little bit, like trust me that we're going to get you to where you want to go. And then also as the coach, kind of, there is an element of like staying in your lane. Don't be the guy who's trying to cater to the athlete or to the parent by saying like, oh yeah, like we'll work on those like, quick feet drills, like that sort of thing. Try like communicate like, hey, we're not going to do that. That's not something that I'm like, that we do, that like I'm gonna save that for
you have
sports.
that opening because they walked through the door,
right? Yeah, and I think that gives you a little bit more credibility. You don't say we're gonna make all your hopes and dreams come true. Say this is what we're really good at, and I'm 100% confident that it's going to improve your overall performance in your sport. You just have to give it a chance.
Yeah, my final thoughts. Well, I have to start with one thing: the amount of DMs to myself and Sharpen the Axe about when the joggers and the yoggers are coming in. It's getting to a critical level.
Critical mass.
Critical mass. It has been a serious challenge. COVID and manufacturing and supply chains and all this stuff. It has been very challenging, but
Sherb can only so fast.
They have
It's burnt out.
made hundreds and hundreds of these, okay? Like we've made them and they're on their way and they will be released somewhat soon, okay? And
A little intriguing mystery for you.
One thing that I will say, no matter what, is we are going absolutely apeshit for Black Friday. Black Friday will be well stocked as we think it should be. Sorry if you're still mad at the end of it. As well stocked as we think it should be. Like all the stuff will be on sale right off the bat. So a very general advertisement for Sharpen the Axe. And we got a bunch of stuff in stock right now. sharpentheaxeco.com. Use the code word unprepared. But I know what the questions are. I know what the people want. We're on it. They are coming. We have a lot of them, so you can just blame each other if you don't get them, really.
I need a new hoodie, coach. Come on.
Yes, we got that stuff coming as well. So sharpentheaxeco.com, use the code unprepared. Sherb touched on sort of the beginning of what my final thoughts were, so I'll try and push them a little bit further just to say, don't overthink this once you get the athlete into the gym. Like, you do have those qualifications. And the only way that you're going to fuck it up is if your insecurity that you don't have those qualifications is there, and you try to go search in other places for something that takes place in your gym every single class that you coach. You need to get people more generally fit to get started. Most athletes that come to you are going to need to get stronger, but if you only work on strength, you're a specialist. You're going back down that road that everyone else is going to take people down. So don't overthink it. Like, as Sherb said, you are qualified. You're absolutely qualified to do it. I think the joke is that you're overqualified. There's not a problem that they're going to come through the door with that you're not going to be able to figure out, or to go to one of your colleagues, or to, message me or email me and be like, hey, have you ever thought about this kind of athlete? Like, you can move the needle for every single person that walks through your door. And I do mean, we've had professional athletes walk through the door before. We work with some professional athletes outside of CrossFit, and we can move the needle even though they're already world class.
I was just going to interject. Like, if you don't know, like, it's another opportunity for you to be better coaches. Like, you get put up against something you don't know the answer to. Like, I jokingly say this a lot at the gym. Like, if you have a question and I don't have the answer to it, I'm going to go figure it out, because I don't like being left there being like, I don't fucking know. Like, it's a great opportunity for you coaches out there to have another avenue or another thing to put on your plate and say, hey, I'd love to be able to have this answer next time you're ready. So, like, the next time someone walks in the gym with a similar question, you're ready to go. So again, that's a little thing I wanted to add, but like, we're never stop learning, and, use that as an opportunity to go, all right, well, I have room to grow now.
And when you do have that athlete come through the doors, you have a great kind of advantage in that you can keep it insanely simple. Like, we always talk about, like, couplets, triplets, like, just keeping the movement simple. Like, sure, I could argue that we could teach a football player how to do handstand push-ups and he would benefit from it. Am I going to have him do that in his first Metcon? Like, probably not. Like, right. you teach somebody how to do a wall ball and, like, a burpee box jump. Like, tell me there's not one coach out there who couldn't write at least a fucking terrible couplet that's going to make that athlete who thinks they're in shape, like, really reassess that. So, like, keep it simple, like, be confident in what you can do, and, like, let the program do what it did for you probably when you first walked through the door.
Final shout out to my 8-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. Sherb, did you see Cam Hayward's sack at the end of the game and how he pushed that guy with his left hand?
I sure did.
Did you see that shit?
That is a strong man.
Oh my God.
That's a very strong
Was that
man.
the final? Was that was the sack to like end the...
Correct. That was the
right.
game. That was
Holy shit. Like, you're
Grown
talking
man.
about, like, world-class, like, I think it was the guard, like, world-class guard blocking world-class defensive tackle, and he took his left hand and just threw like a 300 and something pound man. And oh man, go Steelers. All right, ladies and gents, that was the Unprepared podcast by Misfit Athletics. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our show sponsors, sharpentheaxeco.com. Use the code word unprepared. Yes, the joggers and yoggers will be restocked pretty soon. Properfuel.co for your complete post-workout nutrition solution. Use the code word misfit to save a little bit of dough, and purespectrumcbd.com. Use the code word misfit to save. As always, I'm at Misfit Coach on Instagram. Slide into those DMs. Let me know what you thought of the episode, what you would like to see next, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.